Oh, you're so sweet. I just, I'll be like.
Steve, you would go, we're ready. All right, we're gonna get started here, folks. Cindy, can I ask you to start by reading the statement of compliance into the open record?
The meeting notice was provided to the Hunterdon County Democrat, the Trenton Times, department heads, various individuals on the listserv, and the meeting agenda was posted to the city's website and on the bulletin board at the City Hall. This meeting will be recorded. The meeting agenda provides for action items at the extent known at the time of publication. Would you like roll call?
Please.
Councilwoman Lambert. Here. Councilman Sanders.
Here.
Councilman Stegman.
Here.
Council President Taylor.
Here.
Mayor Fall.
Here. I'm gonna ask everybody to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ask everyone to remain standing for a moment of silence for those of us, those who have fought in our nation's armed forces and those who are fighting on the front lines of the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you.
Okay, business get together here. Great. We've got some business together first, and then we'll move on to the main discussion at hand. First, we have a resolution to approve the person-to-person and place-to-place transfer of the alcoholic beverage control license number 1017-33-001-005 from Steve Williamson to Under the Moon LLC, 23 North Union Street, in the city of Lambertville. Are there any questions from the council regarding this action? Okay, hearing none. A motion to adopt resolution number 150/2021, authorizing transfer of this liquor license.
Now we have to see if there's any public comment.
There has to be public comment on the liquor license transfer? Okay. So we'll open for public comments specifically regarding this liquor license transfer. We're going to limit all comments to 3 minutes, and they must be germane to this issue. Hearing none. Can I get a motion to close the public hearing for the liquor license transfer? Do I need a motion?
So moved.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Okay, can I get a roll call vote for the liquor license?
Close.
No, that's a close. Can I get a motion to, I'm sorry, can I get a motion to pass the resolution number 150/2021?
Second.
Can I get a roll call vote?
Yes. Lambert.
Yeah.
Councilman Sanders.
Yes.
Councilman Stegman.
Yes.
Council President Taylor. Yes. Mayor Fall.
Yes. Okay, moving on, we had a negotiation with our PDA, and we are presenting a resolution to approve that PDA contract for 4 years. Are there any questions or comments from the council? Hearing none, can I get a motion to adopt resolution number 151/2021?
So moved.
Second. No public comment?
No, it's a resolution, it doesn't require public comment. Okay, can I get a roll call for, or sorry, can I get a motion? I got a motion, can I get a roll call to pass resolution number 151/2021?
Councilwoman Lambert.
Yes.
Councilman Sanders.
Yes.
Councilman Stegman.
Yes.
Council President Taylor. Yes. Mayor Fall.
Yes. Okay. Are there any questions regarding our consent agenda numbers 152 through 156 from members of the council?
We have to break out 153.
Oh, I'm sorry.
On 152, um, the material. What were we expecting for the cost? It was higher than we anticipated.
It was higher than we anticipated, and the expectation was that it wouldn't be able to be completed in the year 2021 because of the current temperature. So it's both too high and the total amount of time to allow the bid for this year. Any other questions from council regarding the consent agenda? Okay, hearing none, I'm gonna ask for.
I'm sorry, I have a question. Although I don't know if we're gonna get an answer. So we're giving 278 North Union Street.
Nobody can hear out here.
Speak up, please.
Yeah. you need a
Take it
mic.
easy. We will get the microphone.
Thank you. Just let you know.
So we're giving 278 North Union Street a 6-month extension.
Yes.
Do we have clarity on what that means for the tenants in the building?
So the 6-month extension is specific for 278 is because unlike other residential and commercial buildings in that area, it doesn't have an historic exemption. They've agreed to waive their right to challenge the sustainable damage determination. And so in order to make the repairs necessary to be in compliance with the substantial damage determination, it needs time to get that done. It does mean that there, as soon as the general inspection can be accomplished, which I believe are set for Monday, tenants can move back into that building.
The extension is Monday.
It is tentatively set for Monday.
Okay, so these repairs that require the extension will not impact the tenants? Or
That's correct. They're mostly flood-proofing measures like walls and such and stuff like that.
Okay.
It does not, the building, I can't speak to the building's safety, that inspection will be done by Ken, and then if it is safe for tenants to be in, they'll be given a temporary CO.
Okay, I want to just note for the record that since the agenda went out, we've received communication from tenants and from representatives of tenants having concern about there's a clause in their lease about when they can get out of it if the building is not fit for occupancy. So I just want to note that we have acknowledged the receipt of those concerns. Depending on what happens with Ken, maybe we want to take that into consideration.
I might take this over to Bill, I'm not sure exactly what the council role would be, and I mean, in my eyes, that's an issue between the tenant and their landlord and their lawyers.
I think that it is, but given the nature of damage and the severity of damage, I think it's the kind of thing we are going to hear about as representatives, so we should be prepared for that. And see if there's anything to do.
The only thing I can say is that we've been working directly with the landlord to ensure that all their obligatory changes to that building are being made, and that it's a state viable building. Bill, do you have anything you want to add?
No.
Okay. Okay, so if that's the case, then let's do this on here. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna remove resolution number 153 and 154 for their own votes. So can I get a motion for resolution number 152, 155, and 156?
Second.
Okay, can I get a roll call vote for the affirmative vote for resolutions number 152, 155, and 156?
Councilwoman Lambert,
Yes.
Councilman Sanders,
Yes.
Councilman Stegman,
Yes.
Council President Taylor,
Yes.
Mayor Paul.
Yes. Okay, for resolution number 153, 2021, this is a resolution to approve the participation in the MDL settlement, the opioid settlement. This would assist with increasing funding to the state related to materials for part of our agenda. Councilman Sanders, you asked to have this added to the agenda. Would you like to speak on it?
Yeah, just very briefly, under the agreement, this was recommended by the Attorney General's office that we participate in the agreement. I don't think there's any direct funding because we're too small. It does go by the size of entity. But this is sort of like the census, and the more municipalities that sign up, it impacts the return. to the state of New Jersey. A certain number of municipalities, have to sign on. So it's important for our state. Yes, I participated in a dialogue with the municipalities. So,
Okay, thank you for your work on this.
Can I get a motion to pass resolution number 153, 2021?
So moved.
Okay.
Can I get a roll call?
Councilwoman Lambert,
Abstain.
Councilman Sanders,
Yes.
Councilman Stegman,
No.
Council President Taylor,
Yes.
Mayor Paul.
Yes,
Can I get a, I'm sorry, so for resolution number 154, 2021, this is a resolution to authorize the 6-month extension of block 1004, lot 25, 278 North Union Street for floodproofing of buildings. Can I,
I have a question.
shoot?
Recap why we called this round. I'm not sure I picked up.
Oh, there was a comment on it, so I didn't feel like it was a normal
Okay.
consent.
Okay.
Any other questions from the council on this resolution? Okay. Hearing none, can I get a motion to pass resolution number 154, 2021?
So moved. Second.
Can I get a roll call?
Councilwoman Lambert,
Yes.
Councilman Sanders,
Yes.
Councilman Stegman,
Yes.
Council President Taylor,
Yes.
Mayor Paul.
Yes, okay. I think that's all of our, business tonight. Actually, you know what, I want to do this, our bonds and historic landmark, work before we get to the discussion for the evening. I'll start with the issuance of costs for IDA. 1 second. Okay, so we have here, a bond ordinance, for review of council. This, bond ordinance is to provide improvements to various city infrastructure and buildings damaged by Hurricane Ida in the city of Lambertville, in the county of Hunterdon, New Jersey, appropriating $430,000 therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $409,500 in bonds or notes of the city to finance the part of the cost thereof. So I want to explain quickly what we're doing here. The city of Lambertville is still in its early stages of recovery from Ida. We have had extensive damage in public areas. At this point, the assumed damage is totaling over $7.5 million in just public damage. That does not include any individuals' homes. That's all just public land and property. So we are still within the sort of data and information gathering stage of this, of the FEMA recovery process. This process will take somewhere between 18 and 24 months in total. However, we have several roads that are considered impassable or unsafe as it stands right now. There are also some really severe issues, particularly with water conveyance, that if left entirely undealt with until we can bond for the full cost of our IDA recovery, will likely get worse and more expensive. So the city's been working diligently with our engineers over the course of the last several weeks to try and address the sort of what we're calling our ultra emergency projects that will just sort of put a Band-Aid over what is the gaping wound of damage from Ida to get us into April of next year, where it will be, you know, appropriate for us to be in paving again. And that's all, again, built into what the budgeting schedule is going to be, and sort of for the next council to continue to look at. But there's stuff that we have to do right now before the end of the year to ensure that roads are passable for public safety vehicles, that things don't get a heck of a lot worse. So we have sort of culled this list down from what was about $650,000 to what is now $400,000 and some odd $1,000 of just the most important projects that we really feel can't wait. And that's what we're going to be issuing tonight. we've held off on our capital, all of our capital expenditures for 2021, all of our road projects, some of the material that we had discussed during the budgeting process in July, August, and September, to be able to afford this capital improvement. So it is, we have the down payment for this budget, but the only reason that is true is because we have eschewed our entire capital budget for this year and into next year. So does the council have any questions regarding the scope for these emergency items? Oh, I should mention, most of these, of this money will be subject to, ultimately to a rebate from FEMA. So we'll be able to apply for 75-25, repay. So we'll pay for the local match is 25%, and the federal government will pay the 75%. But that process can take up to 18 months, and so we may not see this in its next budget year, but it will be the budget year thereafter. Does the council have any questions regarding this list? Yes.
Quick question. Do we have a list that we can share with the public, and if not, when do we think that would be, that people can see kind of what's being addressed?
Certainly. Yeah, we can, after the bond ordinance is approved by council, so that would be sort of the council approving each of those projects, we'll then put it up on the web. We'll then put it up on the website on the IDA page.
Okay.
Mayor,
Yes.
were these included in the first go around on the bids that had gone out? Were these, thank you. Were these included, these costs included in the round of bids that we had originally put out the bid again or denied the contract?
Some of the road improvements would have been covered in that initial bid, but because it's December 2nd, most of the asphalt places, if they're not closed already, will be closed by the time that we could mobilize that bid. And so this is a way for us to do stopgap measures like, cold patching instead.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, any other questions from the council on this action? Okay, hearing none, can I get a motion to introduce on first reading ordinance number 31, 2021?
So moved.
Second.
Can I get a roll call?
Councilwoman Lambert? Yes. Councilman Sanders?
Yes.
Councilman Stegman?
Yes.
Council President Taylor?
Yes.
Mayor Paul?
Yes, okay. Last one of these, we've got ordinance number 32. This is a reintroduction of an ordinance we've been working on as a council. This is an ordinance to amend the city of Lambertville's land use ordinance to include section 903 designation of historic landmarks and historic districts. We had already introduced this ordinance 2 voting sessions ago. There were some questions regarding consented parties and whether or not this designation would stick to the land. We were able to work through those issues and come to what we think is slightly better language on this ordinance, and so we're reintroducing that to have this pass at our December 16th, have a public hearing at the December 16th meeting.
Is there a version that has, the version that I saw in search today, is it in here?
No, so Council President Taylor, Councilman Stegman was asking about,
If there was language where the landmark designation goes with the property and is not,
Right, the ordinance is silent, the ordinance is silent as to that, the assumption being that it runs with the property, but we did agree to look at that and see if there's other language we want to put in later.
I thought it was going to go in this draft.
No, we chose to stay silent on that as the assumption with general historic landmark law is that it continues with the property, but that there was an agreement to work with the Historic Preservation Commission and the planning board to look further into language if it needed to be amended.
The follow-up question, does it weaken this particular?
I do not believe so, no. I believe that it does what you're asking it to do without it having to be specified. Okay, any other questions from the council? Yes.
I have a question. In the event that a city property is put up for historic designation, the council would be the owner, or the city would be the owner, and the council would be the approval. Is there any?
I'll start with,
In the event that the city puts up a piece of city property is put up for historic designation, the city's the owner and the governing body is the approver. Is there a conflict of interest there at all?
no, because the city can't profit from having it be a historic landmark. So it's in my personal opinion, it's in the city's best interest. Oh, sorry, do you mind if I snap that back? Or Councilman, would you mind sending this down?
There would be no conflict of interest because there's no profit for a city government. So in my personal opinion, it would be in the city's best interest to, for the historic properties that are gems of our community, like like City Hall or like the Blue Mansion, to declare those historic, to declare those historic landmarks because they are. And that local designation will allow us to apply for grants. It's done regularly in other communities that are CLG communities.
And also, the governing body will go on an extensive record when it ultimately has to make a decision. So we come to the Historic Preservation Commission, planning board, there would be significant materials in front of the council that they can find on, apart from just the fact that they own the property. So that doesn't go into any analysis regarding conflict. Would just be arbitrary action by the council to designate somebody as a significant body, significant record. That is it.
And just to recap what Councilman Segment asked, we're not putting specific language in regarding the designation following ownership of the property
Because that's how, because we, the way that historic preservation works within the state and within the country is that it follows, it follows the land. So the original conversation was whether or not we wanted to supply owners with an alternate to weaken this ordinance and supply owners with a direct path of removing that historic status. There seemed to be consensus that there was interest in not weakening this ordinance and instead leaving the ordinance silent because it assumes that it moves with the land, but that conversation can continue into next year and beyond if the council wants to work with historic preservation and planning for a potential amendment.
So is the assumption based on like legal precedent?
Yes.
What you're saying, so
And
cases that have been.
Well, I can't say cases that I'm sorry, it is based on precedent of how historic preservation designations work both at the state and federal level.
I'm not sure if that's. So I'm just trying to understand who made that assumption, aside from obviously stating it. Like, is there, like, assumptions are usually based on criteria, right? That you assess and you draw an assumption based on facts that you have.
Sure.
What's the foundation? What's the underlying premise for the assumption? That's kind of.
So this ordinance was actually written by taking 5 separate municipal ordinances, amended some from the state of New Jersey, some from other states, and recommended language from the State Historic Preservation Office so that we can get CLG status. So the assumption was based on language and precedent from other places that are CLG communities and that have similar historic preservation designation ordinance.
No, I'm just trying to process. So it's based on leveraging what other municipalities, some sample municipalities have done. But
And the way that historic preservation generally works at the state and federal level.
Right, so there's no outlaws. So if somebody wants once the property is designated, if somebody wants to get out, given the way this is written, they would have to petition council and historic preservation commission. So there's no outlaws. But what we are thinking about considering, and the reason we didn't stick this in the past week and a half is because we just didn't have time. If you look at the National Register, there are very clear criteria under what kinds of circumstances a property can be removed from the list. It's pretty strict. So we want to have a little bit of time to look at that. So as of now, there's no outlaws. From my perspective, I feel comfortable that we are safe. We want to designate these properties and make sure they stay designated. But I do think it's intelligent for us to take some time to look, do we want to put any of this other criteria in? So for example, if you look at the national rules for the National Register, things like if the building has lost whatever existed that made it historically unique, if let's say, it was an architectural style and somebody has gone in and taken off all of the outward appearances of that particular style, then maybe it would be taken off the list at some point. Someone could successfully petition to get it off the list. So that's what we should consider over the next couple months and add in here if you want, but as of now, there's no outlaws.
okay, but it sounds like you're saying that the governing body would have to weigh in on a request like that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just have one other quick thing? The process for this designation is going to take quite some time before this is ever done, before a council decision. So it does give us a lot of time. We can't dawdle, but we should try to address that circumstances too, where you say there's a well or something that's deemed historic. If it's damaged or storm or a flood or whatever, there may be reasons for it being designated. The reasons for its designation. So, but I think we have plenty of time to get this in place, start the process in place, and then give us some time to look at how we want to try to address these,
I have a quick. Thank you, Mayor. If the building that has been designated a landmark is not in the jurisdiction of the current scope and area of the Historic Preservation Commission, how much input would they have in that circumstance where the facade, the front of the building was damaged to an extent that the owner, if they choose to proceed, have to follow the restrictions that the Historic Preservation Commission would put on a building that is inside of the current scope of their authority?
So the historic preservation designation means that once it is designated as a local landmark, it is within the jurisdiction of the Historic Preservation Commission. So if a building was designated a landmark, damaged, just like a building that was inside the historic
So,
the historic zone, thank you. Both would be subject to historic preservation review.
okay, yeah, just wanted to make sure that because the designated landmark is not in the quote unquote zone that the city's established, that it would still be overseen and work on it by the Historic Preservation Commission.
The entire, or I won't say the entire, A key goal of this ordinance is to ensure that historic landmarks that mark our community are reviewed and protected by our Historic Preservation Commission.
All right, thank you.
Are there any further comments or questions from the council? Hearing none, can I get a motion to introduce ordinance ordinance number 32, 2021, an ordinance to amend the city of Lambertville's land use ordinance to include section 903, designation of historic landmarks and historic districts.
So moved.
Second.
Can I get a roll call?
Councilwoman Lambert,
Yes.
Councilman Sanders,
Yes.
Councilman Stegman,
Yes,
Council President Taylor,
Yes.
Mayor Paul.
Yes, excellent. We will be having a public hearing on that ordinance on December 16th.
Mayor, did you want to do the affordable housing as well?
No, we're gonna do the discussion of that now. We're gonna do it all together. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I do want to do that. Thank you, Cindy.
Sure.
Sorry, give me 1 second here.
Ordinance number 27.
Thank you, Cindy. One moment. Okay. This is ordinance number 27, 2021. This is an ordinance amending certain sections as specified below. The city of Lambertville's land development review ordinance, article 12, affordable housing, section LDR 1200, affordable housing ordinance to address the requirements of the Fair Share Housing Act and uniform housing affordability controls regarding compliance with the city's affordable housing obligation. This is actually something that Council President Taylor worked directly on. Do you want to speak to the ordinance first?
Just briefly, as many people here have commented on in the past, we had our inclusionary zoning ordinance up until now has stated that there are only certain cases in which affordable housing would be required. And that's generally speaking, if there is a redevelopment plan, a redevelopment plan or a variance needed in a couple other situations. But basically, it left us in situations like with the Wine Act that we've heard comment on where property, buildings, redevelopment is going ahead, but we're not getting any affordable housing. So the goal of this change is to make it so that any property that is over 5 units and greater than 6 units per acre density, and those are the statewide regulations around where it makes sense to do affordable housing. So any project that meets those criteria will then have to provide affordable housing. So basically, this makes it possible for us to have more affordable housing. Yes, we might want to see if Emily wants to add anything.
Oh, Emily, actually, glad you're here. We saved a seat for you if you'd like to come up. Are there any questions or comments from the council prior to this, prior to any comments? I know we've been talking about this ordinance now for about 10 minutes, so I really appreciate you working on this diligently and getting it in. Emily, do you have any comments regarding the?
Nothing further than what Council President Taylor already said.
Okay, great. If there are no further questions, then can I get a motion to introduce on first reading ordinance number 27, 2021?
Second.
City, can I get a roll call?
Councilwoman Lambert,
Yes.
Councilman Sanders,
Yep.
Councilman Stegman,
yes,
Council President Taylor,
Yes.
Mayor Paul.
Yes. Okay, now we can move, Now we can move to our discussion items for the evening. 1 second here. Okay, so tonight, we have on first reading, the ordinance number 29, ordinance number 30, and ordinance number, that's it. I wanted to make sure that we had each of our, experts here today. We're going to, review what, we're voting on tonight. I want to remind everyone here that this is a first reading. So the council has been deliberating on documents because they're part of negotiations. They were not available to the public. This vote to introduce will allow us to release some of those deliberative documents so that the public can review them. Though we will then, I'm sorry, I'm gonna ask everybody, I understand there's a lot of frustration in the room, and everybody will get a moment to speak during public comment. I'm gonna ask the grumbling and head shaking and stuff, we're all trying to get our work done here. So if we can all remember to be respectful, I really appreciate it. We are going to, if we pass this on first review, we will then release those deliberative documents. We are going to have a webinar with members of our executive team, including Michael Drulis, who's our budget consultant, Emily, who's our state planner, Bill, who's our legal advisor, and our financial advisor, Tracy. That will be on December 8th, thank you, at 6 p.m. It'll be available by Zoom. If we pass this ordinance on first reading, after we release those documents to the public, we will also be creating a city email address where members of the public can write feedback, comments to the council. Those will be generated to council. Obviously, also members of the public can email us directly. I think you guys have, we certainly received quite a few emails on this already. I'd like to remind folks that it's actually easier if you send us individual emails. Council cannot respond to emails where all of us are on, or all of us are copied because it's considered a quorum. So if you can send them to us individually, it's very helpful. At that point, we will then hear on second reading where there will be available public comment on December 16th for deliberation, debate, and then ultimately whether an up or down vote on December 16th. At that December 16th hearing, by request of members of the council, we will be streaming that meeting and taking online comment from members of the public. So to address some concerns from members of council. So the action that we're taking here tonight to sort of take this up in sum is to release documents to the public to begin sort of the review and discussion of what the final deal points of a negotiation that we've been discussing for about 2.5 years. So before we move into sort of that general discussion, I do just want to remind folks, this is again just a first reading, so just like all the other ordinances that we had tonight, we won't have public hearing on each of them individually, but there will be a public comment at the end of this meeting. That's the public comment at the end of every meeting, and you're welcome to speak on any issue at that time. We'll be limiting those comments to 3 minutes. So with that, I will do a quick overview of what the key points of where we are in the deal with Callan for the redevelopment of the police site. And then I'll kick it over to Michael to talk a little bit about some budget implications, and we'll go from there. Okay. So the final agreement with Callan is for the sale of the police site for $1 million to the city of Lambertville. The way that agreement is going to work is that the city will move forward with that sale of the police site. The final sort of moment will not, the final closing and sale will not happen until Callan has had 6 months to do their due diligence and also to pass their plan for the planning board. Callan has requested an increase in the number of units on that site from the original 23 to 27. It will not change the footprint of the building that was designed at the end of last year with the community advisory team. It will simply just allow for them to be able to afford the cost of managing the affordable housing units and allow for the deal to pencil. I think those are the only major deal points that I was thinking about.
So there's 2 agreements that are central. One is for introduction tonight, that's the financial agreement. And the second agreement is the redevelopment agreement. That is not on point, that just requires approval by resolution. So that will be on the agenda on December 16th for a vote, along with the other items that are on tonight. The redevelopment agreement that will be voted on the 16th contains the purchase and sale terms by which county would purchase the wayside property in the city. It also includes some other points about how county has to, assuming that the deal is enacted, how they have to progress through their construction and what requirements they have to obtain governmental approvals throughout that process. So the main points as the mayor discussed are 27 million, 46 parking spaces, $1 million purchase price, and as described in the agreement of the project schedule that requires a submission to the planning board by March or April next year, and then as well as significant construction milestones after that process.
Thank you. So the, one of the key conditions of this deal is going to be the $1 million payment for the cost of the police site. I think that can be significant to us for a couple of reasons. The first and foremost being that, the city of Lambertville is in significant and dire straits from Hurricane Ida. As mentioned earlier in tonight's meeting, we have about $7.5 million of damage that we have to account for in the next 18 months to begin to rebuild our community. That, as it stands now, only includes the cost to rebuild back to where it was. It doesn't include any rebuild back to functionally August 30th, 2021. It does not include any of the potential infrastructure projects that would be required for us to prepare for further storms. The city of Lambertville is required by the federal government to pay 25% of that $7.5 million. As a gentle reminder, our city budget right now is $6.2 million. So this is a really significant hit for our community. For next year, as we begin to think through bonding for these buildings, each of those bonds will require a 5% down payment upfront. So that has to be budgeted for in our 2022 budget. If so, at the beginning of the budgeting process, we will have to stock away somewhere between $250,000 and $375,000 to address Ida damages and to begin bonding so that we can start to repair our community. That $375,000, somewhere between $250,000 and $375,000 will either have to be raised through revenue, like the sale of leased property, or through increases in taxes. And so this is one of the sale of the police property will allow us to avoid Ida-related tax increases and allow us to ensure that we can move forward and rebuild our community. Mike, do you want to talk a little bit more about the yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. Some of my notes here may duplicate what's already been said, but I think the details are important enough to state twice. So good evening, everyone, members of council. My name is Michael Jules, I'm a budget consultant for the city. I worked with the city in 2021 on the creation budget with the governing body and city officials. And so some of the information I'll provide tonight is as a result of that process. The city engineer, as you have heard, has identified no less than $7 million in damage as a result of tropical storm Ida. Damages includes public buildings, roadways, storm sewer infrastructure, destruction of city right of way, and the recovery costs are still rising. The cost of these repairs, as the mayor mentioned, will be reimbursed up to 75%, provided that FEMA approves our application and spend that money. To do so, the city is required to raise the repair cost money first, do the work, complete the project, then file the application with FEMA, and then the 75% will be reimbursed for future budget years. This is going to take many years to get the money back for reimbursement. As you know, each year the city adopts its current year budget in the same calendar year. The city does not have $7 million to make the repairs, and will seek to borrow the money to make the repairs. In order to borrow the money, these types of improvements by local finance laws require that we put 5% of whatever we're going to borrow down into the current year as a cash deposit. The 2021 budget year is going to end on the calendar year. In 2022, we will be taking on these rebuilding costs. The council tonight considered very minor improvements in this capital ordinance they worked on, just to do some minor repairs for 2021. We're talking now about 2022, taking on the full rebuilding process. So staying with round numbers, if we stay with $7 million, 5% of $7 million will require that we will have to raise $350,000 in 2022, just to be allowed to go out and borrow $7 million that we will then hope to get reimbursed. Through the 2021 budget process, I see familiar faces in the room from when we introduced and adopted in the summer. There was approximately $357,000 of deficit that has been moving year over year and will present itself about the handle in 2022. That doesn't include the outcome of what shortfalls 2021 came as a result of revenue fall off from the storm impacted community. So the total deficit in 2022, just based on those numbers, it starts us off with about $700,000 deficit in our 2022 budget. And $700,000 on the $6 million budget is $700,000 is a lot of money to begin with on top of a $6 million budget. This is $700,000 that will need to be raised either by taxes or otherwise in 2022 to meet the expenses related to the deficit and the item damage. This is over what we expect in a typical budget year. So if we sketch out a quick timeline in terms of what's required financially, governmentally, budgetarily, taking action on this ordinance in 2021 will, if all things go as they do, and it goes as good as it can, will pretty much allow the city to work for about a month and a half in the 2022 construction season in the fall. So we'll be able to really get to these improvements in the fall of 2022. If the ordinance does not happen in 2021, then it's likely that any of these large item FEMA repairs will not commence until the spring of 2023. I think I commend the governing body for their wisdom to hold a session on Wednesday to discuss this, because there's a lot of details and information that are worth sharing and deliberating on. I know the mayor tonight will be glad to take notes on anything I hear that may help to advance that discussion on Wednesday.
Can you explain why that timeline exists, that there's no binding commitment passed?
Sure. Council President asked me to talk a little bit about the timeline. So essentially, when you did, Mr. Opel, Bill gave us a pretty good timeline of what would happen in terms of how we would move through the planning board process and when the council would have an opportunity again to approve the project. If all were to go correctly and be able to go through, so to speak, that the city would have cash in hand probably by July 2022. The state requires that local governments function on a cash basis. So when we introduce our budget, the state has to approve it. Really can't introduce a budget that doesn't have the cash in hand. Without that cash in hand, we can't introduce the budget. So if we're going to do the item repairs, we're going to have 5% down, that deficit is now in that budget. With the cash in hand in July, we would be able to move forward through our budget process, which means that essentially, if we really push and get everything done right, we may be able to adopt our budget in August of 2022. That is important because in that budget, we're telling the state and we're telling the folks we're gonna borrow from, our citizens, that we have reserved necessary cash to borrow for that FEMA, I keep on being, but we've put enough down payment to borrow for the repairs. That has to be in the budget. So the budget passes middle of August. We then can do our general capital ordinance, similar to what we're doing tonight for the less than $500,000, but that will be likely more than $7 million. That ordinance will take 2 meetings, take an advertising and stop period. So by the time that this governing body will be permitted to spend any of that money at a council meeting, we're looking at probably the first week of October. Now you have October through December, depending on the weather, because most of these projects involve concrete, macadam, etc. You're going to have a 4 to 6 week window in order to start that work. Provided that all the work has been done with the engineers regarding design, mobilization, supply chain issues, etc. We're in a unique time of year because, of course, an ordinance needs 2 readings. So it's anything that does not get done in this year would have to start over in January, which would probably create that 6 week window to close. And we will not be, we may be able to borrow the money, we'll start paying on the money, but we won't be able to substantially make the improvements for the spring of 2020.
Just a couple follow-up questions. So, do I hear correctly that we cannot bond period until the budget is passed?
For that large amount, correct.
Okay, so there's some threshold.
But yes, it's a
Okay.
question, yes.
And this timeline is based on the assumption that this deal will go through and we are banking on $1 million. What does this look like if this doesn't go through and we aren't banking on $1 million?
So if the deal does not go through, and it's still the intention of the city to make these repairs, we are starting off with a $700,000 hole in the 2022 budget. That hole doesn't account for any 21 issues that may have resulted from revenue shortfalls and expenditures that came as a result of IDA from 2021.
And code.
We're still recovering, as the mayor has said, from the COVID losses, and unfortunately, that recovery has been slower than we wanted it to be. So we will have a budget that we cannot introduce because you have to introduce a balanced budget. We don't have the ability to raise taxes by $700,000 with the 2% cap on raising taxes. So we will likely end up having to go through other meetings involving other agencies, state, ELGS, et cetera, to have to find a solution. But those solutions become more costly, and the city loses the ability to control its future when it cannot make a budget.
Okay. Oh, you know what, this is mine. Okay,
Is this on? Yes. Okay, so we've gone over sort of the financial aspects of this deal, that the city is expecting $1 million payment, and that $1 million payment will come in sometime in July, and hopefully that will help us manage our IDA damage and expenses. Although it likely will not manage the entire cost of the IDA, the deficit that you discussed, the $700,000 deficit, is a part of the total expected deficit. Is that correct? So the likely deficit will be more than $700,000. Okay. So the secondary part of the financial review is the tax analysis, and a portion of that is our payment in lieu taxes agreement, which will be an essential part of this deal. Bill, can you give a brief overview on what the payment of taxes is?
Bill, can you please hold the mic close? Thank you.
Anytime a long-term tax exemption is granted, municipality that grants it is required to enter into a formal agreement with the developer, it's called a financial agreement, and it sets forth the terms for the annual service charge that's paid to the city in lieu of taxes. So just to be clear, financial agreement does not exempt the entirety of any kind of payment to the city. It sets forth an annual service charge that's paid to the city in lieu of conventional property taxes. This financial agreement is required to be approved by ordinance of the governing body, so it is on for introduction tonight. The term of the financial agreement is either 35 years from the date of execution of that financial agreement or 30 years from substantial completion of the project. Substantial completion meaning a certificate of occupancy is issued and the project is built and ready to be rented out. For this financial agreement, it's contemplated that the annual service charge for the first 10 years of the agreement, 10% of the annual gross revenue of the entity, and then for the final 20 years, so for years 11 to 30, the annual service charge to be paid to the city would be 15% of the annual gross revenue of the project. The city will also obtain a 2% administrative fee that will be paid directly to the city. Larger numbers, the projection shows that the city will receive approximately $4.5 million in annual service charges over the 30-year term of the financial agreement, which is about $2,750,000 more than it would receive from national taxation. That's the net gain of what the city would receive. Annual service charge payments will begin on the first day of the month following the substantial completion of the project. So once it's fully constructed, that's when the annual service charge would come online. Up until that point, assuming the project is sold to the developer, they would pay conventional taxes in the interim until the project is built. Any change in ownership of the redeveloper would require notice to the city and city approval. So essentially is locked in unless they've gotten the appropriate steps in accordance with the application and the governing body has given its consent. And of course, the financial agreement will be recorded with the county. So the city tax assessor will be aware of it. They'll know how much has to be paid. There's an annual audit provision where the city will be able to see the annual gross revenues to determine what exactly is 10% for the first 10 years, 15% for the next 20. So there's a significant amount of oversight on the city's part to know what is definitely going to lose.
Thank you. Emily, I have a quick question for you. Beyond being our planner, you're the planner for multiple other municipalities. And you oversee COA agreements and COA development in those other municipalities?
Yeah.
Have you ever seen a COA agreement or a COA development built at the 20% set aside like this county deal without a pilot?
I have when it's not part of the redevelopment. When it's not part of the redevelopment.
Okay, and so is a pilot a normal course of action to be taken to ensure that affordable housing is developed in the community?
Yes.
Okay, so then the last question we've gone over our financial analysis and the financial agreement, our budget review, the tax implications specific to our tax implications from IDA. The last thing that we're going to discuss is where we're going to be temporarily moving these. So we have identified the old gym that's behind the old Trenton Cracker Factory, which is owned by Fedway, as a suitable site for the police to move for a 5-year lease with an extension, with an option to extend for up to another 5 years with an annual basis of renewal. The terms of that deal and that term sheet will be released to the public for their review at if tonight we approve this ordinance on first reading. The goal here is to try and address some of the public concern that we've heard specific to the facilities review as a whole and the police being removed from that facilities review, as well as to sort of for the city to be able to address a true master plan. So what this agreement does is it allows the city to take the $1 million revenue that we'll need to recover from IDEX and some of our other shortfalls, and for the city to take a step back, take 5 years, wherein both the payment from county and the pilot payments will cover the lease agreement, and will allow us to take a step back and consider a more holistic plan for not just our police department, but for all of our city facilities, and for us to be able to really engage the community on not just where the police should go, but how each of our city facilities operates, each of our buildings operate, how our cities laid out. And that gives the city 5 years to have long-term public discussions, as well as sort of this larger master plan, without having to sacrifice our affordable housing agreement. So this hopefully will allow us to continue to move forward on building as much affordable housing as possible. And I want to stress that the city has already put the village apartments, that we have already identified the village apartments as another potential site for affordable housing. We're going through a area need redevelopment study on that now. But that it has been made very clear that we have an affordable housing crisis in our community, made worse by IDA. We should do everything we can to build as much affordable units and housing units in general in the city of Lambertville. This allows us to move forward on a plan that we've been working on for 2.5 years, and to really step back and do some of the long-term strategic planning that's necessary for a major capital investment like a police department. So this is, in my eyes, a compromise rather than investment in one particular site. This gives the city the time that it needs to have the robust community discussion that we'll need in order to find not only the final place for the police department, but also to really just to digest the full facility review, which we approved earlier this year, and to consider what the future of the city of Lambertville's facilities are. Okay, so that's the presentation as it stands right now. Are there any questions or comments from council?
Well, foundational questions, just to be clear. So when we talked about sort of extraordinary measures that need to be undertaken, you didn't name them per se, but think about the sort of takeovers of cities. But there are the possibility is sales of additional other assets. So just to be clear, that is a possibility for the city to look at its current assets. So timing may be challenging to get it done in time. That is an alternative.
So my statement was in the context of the ordinance in front of us tonight. The city has many ways to generate revenue, as we all know, through taxation, through fees, and through land sale. Like you alluded to timing. The matter of the fact is, in order to anticipate a revenue, it has to be cash in hand. So if a sale could occur prior to the budget, then yes, include it. If not, it would simply be included in next year's budget.
And another source of potential revenue is
Hold the mic up, please.
another source of revenue is the if cannabis stores do get approved in the city, the timing of that is going to probably be later in calendar year 22. Can you talk about the timing if we were to receive that, and how enter into the planning process.
So what I can share in my knowledge of the process, because the cannabis laws are new to every community. I understand that the state will be releasing its applications on limited uses of cannabis growth, and that would happen in the spring of 2022, or during the day. By the time that happens, we would have to have the facilities up and running, so we have to determine how we're going to collect the revenue that can be gotten from that. So it's likely that whatever cannabis money will come in 2023. If everything works the way it's supposed to, there's a lot of other agencies involved, not just the city. Most folks that I talk to are saying it's going to be the middle of 2023 phenomenon. Maybe things into 2023 budget. I would say reading the tea leaves as they are now, nothing significant changes, it's a short bet in 2024.
And just point clarification, I think, especially for the audience, that ordinances that are not adopted by the end of the calendar year expire. So, there's been some concern about the timing of this. We couldn't propose in December and delay the second reading until January. Just for the benefit of the audience, I just wanted to.
Yes, that's correct. At the end of the year, all unfinished business closes and the year stands on its own, so we would have to start the process over again with the introduction of the same ordinance.
So if we this ordinance and relocate the police temporarily for 5 years, what happens if we don't find a home in 5 years for the police?
The lease agreement states that you have, that council has up to another 5 years on an annual rotating basis beginning June 1st. So the council could continue to renew that lease on June 1st for another 5 years. They could, at that point, negotiate a further lease or continue to look for a lease.
To be clear, the end of the first 5 years, 5 consecutive one-year terms. So if something were to come up in the interim in one of the years, the seat would be tied in for 5 more years, just one-off carryovers for 5 years.
And how do the terms of the subsequent 5 years of the lease compare with the first 5 years in terms of cost?
The subsequent costs, I don't have the details in front of me, thank you so much, I appreciate that. Functionally, the lease years, the lease agreement goes up about approximately a little less than $1 a square foot in years 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Each of those years.
Correct.
Okay. So does, does the budget and, the financial analysis that you shared with us, or told us about rather, does that include or reflect the cost of a permanent home for the police, in addition to not just the next 5 years, in other words?
Michael's memo, which was provided to council, and some version of that memo will provide to the community, does state explicitly that the financial analysis will hold for the building of a new police site based on the pilot tax revenue from the sale of the police site and the creation of units. Michael, I want to speak for you.
No, you pretty much characterized it. The pilot has escalating payments that grow over time. And as the longer the pilot runs and the more revenue it creates, and that revenue is significant enough to make the payments required for any debt incurred by building any type of police complex. the concept when it comes to borrowing in local government for the benefit of our guests and our citizens is it's not just about borrowing money that you have to pay for it today, but you identify the useful life of it, and usage that bill has a useful life of 20 years. You split the payment of that so that the citizenry who are using it have the ability to pay for it rather than the people who paid for it when they built it, pay for the whole thing, and then everyone else gets that benefit.
One more question, Michael. So can you share with the public what the, estimate was for that calculation? Is it possible for you to share that? And I understand if you can't, but I think the public would like to know.
I'm more than happy to on Wednesday. I don't have it in front of me. If you wouldn't mind, I can pull one of the notes, you can pull a report on that.
Council, which, I just want to make sure I know what you're asking about, the cost for a future police site?
A permanent location, yes, a future permanent location of the police.
Right, as you know, we don't have that number. So what Mike was talking about, and he can provide more information, is that the amount in the pilot covers several $1 million of debt. I think we were talking somewhere around $4 million. That's what the pilot would cover, but we don't have, we know that we don't know the cost at this point.
I thought I recommended that we would not be moving to sell the police site until we knew the cost. And if we don't have at least some sort of viable estimate of that cost, then I don't have any words.
I mean, I think that's a reasonable concern, however, that's not what's before us tonight. What's before us is the introduction of the ordinance, without which we are not at liberty to share the documents that you have seen with the rest of the public. So,
I have concerns about that. I have concerns, I have to say, that this is, if not, one of the most consequential, if not the most consequential decision this city has faced in recent memory, that it has taken so long for us to have this dialogue publicly. And I'm concerned that we're pushing to introduce something that people have really a limited opportunity to weigh in on something that is so important. And you don't need to respond. Thank you.
but I hear your point, and I agree with you. If you don't introduce, the public has no opportunity to see the information.
Quick question, can you remind, so the folks out here know, is that tonight's vote, just to restate what you said, is only to introduce this. And the second question I think the public should know is how many votes tonight it will take to introduce this so it would have a first reading. I think that would be important, and I think Bill has mentioned this. Can you tell people more like the process a little bit? And not only introduce it, but then again to have it passed.
So, Bernie, this is.
Do you speak up, sir? Yeah, he's working on it.
Can I turn it on?
So this is an ordinance, so it requires 2 readings. Tonight is the introduction of the ordinance. It'll be the first reading, it'll be published in the newspaper, it'll set up for the hearing on December 16th. The public will be able to provide comment on the ordinance. The information will be posted to some extent on the city website. There will be an information session next week. But tonight's variance vote is simply to move forward to have a hearing in public on 16th. With regard to, as different from a bond ordinance, which requires a supermajority. This is a regular ordinance, so it will carry the second reading with a majority vote of the governing body, and also on adoption, will carry with a majority vote of the governing body, which would in effect be 3 votes to the 5 member governing body.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Are there any other questions or comments regarding the overview of both of these ordinances in the council?
Could you talk a little bit about why it's necessary to propose in order to release the information for the audience?
Sure, Bill, if you want to.
Councilman's question was, why is it important to introduce the ordinances and release the information? Right now, these are draft documents. The financial agreement, which is the subject of ordinance 29/2021, is a draft document right now. In order for council to release that, they have to introduce it at that point in order to prepare the public for the public comment on the 16th. Those documents would then no longer drafts, they would be the subject of the vote by the council, and therefore, public documents will be reviewed. So that's the intention of, behind releasing documents after introduction. Right now, there's simply drafts, public documents that are released.
But Bill, isn't there, in this case, because these are not just drafts, but based on negotiations with private entity, is that not also part of the reason why we need to introduce or release information?
Yes, there's financial information in these documents related to the developers' projections related to the site, our financial professionals' analysis of those projections. So that is technically proprietary commercial information that otherwise wouldn't be available, but once it becomes subject of the council and public hearing, the information that they can be shared with the public.
I would like to also add that for ordinance number 30, which is an agreement between Fedway Associates and the city of Lambertville, that those are negotiated documents, and until council agrees to release them, we don't release negotiating material. Are there any questions or comments from council? Okay, hearing none. Can I'm going to read ordinance number 2021. This is an ordinance of the city of Lambertville, County of Hunterdon, New Jersey, approving the application for the long-term tax extension and the authorizing application for execution of a financial agreement with Lambertville Urban Renewal LLC, affiliate of County Management LLC. Can I get a motion to approve this ordinance upon first reading? Can I get a second?
Second.
Can I get a roll call?
Councilwoman Lambert? No. Councilman Sanders?
Yes, but clearly reserving the right to review these documents, hear from the public, and consider those inputs before
Councilman Stegman?
No.
Council President Taylor?
Yes, based on the fact that, as I've said on the phone and email to several people today, that if we don't do this, we can't provide the information people have wanted, and this is not a yes vote on the project.
Mayor Paul?
Yes.
Can I get I'm going to read ordinance number 30, 2021 into the record. This is an ordinance authorizing the execution of a lease agreement between the city of Lambertville and Lambertville Canal Properties LLC, Fedway Associates, to use a portion of the property located at 8 Gilbert Lane, first floor, Unit C, block 1022, lot 8. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Can I get a roll call?
Councilwoman Lambert?
No.
Councilman Sanders?
Yes.
Councilman Stegman.
No.
Council President Taylor.
Yes.
Mayor Fall.
Yes.
Okay, yes.
One other item that we had is an ordinance on second reading was originally scheduled for tonight. The county grant application.
No, that was for December 16th.
Okay, good. That was,
I didn't have that on tonight. Tonight was only first reading.
okay, understood. I just wanted to make sure because it was on tonight and we had to carry it. We had to know that it was going to be on December 16th, so I just wanted to be clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Okay, we're now going to open up for public comment. I have a couple of requests of the public before we begin. First, we're going to limit all comments to 3 minutes so that everybody has a chance. If your comment has been made multiple times, we ask that out of respect for everybody's time here, that you simply concur. You are welcome to write an email just as well to reiterate your response. Please state your name and address at the beginning of your statement. Speak clearly into the microphone. I'm going to ask that everyone try and operate with some decorum, no cheering, no clapping, no yelling, that we all treat each other respectfully. Go ahead, Paul. It may be easier for you to pull it out.
So on? Okay. Paul Stevens, 39 Ford. I'd like to go back to something Councilwoman Lambert said, and that is not only having a final destination for the police station. And the reason I bring that up is that uncertainty, back on June 1st, we were supposed to know this by August 10th. Okay, that was the pledge everybody made to all of us, that by August 10th. So now we're in this predicament from IDA where, we've got to raise a lot of money, okay? It's just a shame that we couldn't have gotten at least this discussion going like was promised to us back in June. Having said that now, I'm also concerned moving forward that this $1 million in the pilot, that once Callian does their due diligence and they come back and they find out that what everybody's told you guys about that police station site since it went on in the plan about, there's issues with it in terms of structure, geology. There's, we've been looking at the flood down there, at least the police station was the only one that survived up there. But there's potential issues with what was done on that site in the past environmentally, that they're going to come back and they're going to say, we're not going to give you $1 million now. It's just like when you go to contract and selling your home, they do the inspection, they come back to you and they say, oh, well, I didn't know about this until we got the inspector in here. We're going to have to renegotiate this sale price. And they're going to want to renegotiate the pilot. And so are there any provisions to keep that from happening? Because we're making a bet here. We're going to get $1 million for the sale. We're going to get $4 million plus over the life of it. And those numbers seem suspect to me. Let me put it optimistic. I'm going to put positive spin on optimistic. And any comments, questions?
We're going to take all of the public comments, and most of this will be addressed in the Wednesday meeting, so we're listening to the public right now.
Fair enough.
Hi, Sean Ellis, 204 Brunswick Avenue. I want to be really clear about this ordinance. It's not simply to release the numbers to the public. If that was the case, you could write a resolution or an ordinance that scoped into that, right? This gives the mayor specific powers to effectuate and alter the financial analysis, okay? I'm sorry, the financial agreement. This is not about getting information in front of the public. If that's the case, if that's what you want to do, table this one and scope it so that you can authorize the release of that information. Secondly, there are some serious concerns that people have over the power lines that are adjacent to the property. There are linkages and correlations with over rare childhood cancer and childhood leukemia and genetic damage from electromagnetic frequencies. PSEG is scheduled in January to quadruple the current that's going through those wires. If you've ever been in a canoe or a boat under that 202 bridge and you see the hair on your arm stand up and you feel the electromagnetic frequencies when you go under that, that's what we're talking about putting 4 people under, okay? Meanwhile, there's been a lot of development in town on much better sites that has no set aside for affordable housing. So this is really telling that we're sticking to 4 people under the power lines in a flood-prone area that is likely contaminated because it was an auto body shop that has associated dump. This may not be against the law, but it's a big moral issue, and y'all are going to be voting on this very soon, and I think that's something to think about. We also just passed a bond ordinance without blinking for $400,000, but the sky's falling over $350,000. This, I find it hard to believe that we couldn't come up with that money. I also think that $650,000 that's left after we pay this down payment for the FEMA stuff is not going to go a long way when we're talking about moving the police. Okay, that's modifications to the new building, whatever security cameras, anything that they need in there to make it a police station, plus the 5 years rent. I don't know, obviously we'll find that out, what they're gonna be paying, what we're gonna be paying.
3 minutes.
Okay, and so I wanna see the numbers, and and the fact that we don't even have any idea of a police station showing off
3 minutes.
in our heads is ridiculous. Utterly,
Sean, I'm gonna ask you, if there's a long line there. we're gonna have to-
that's sorry, I just wanted to make my points, thank you very much.
While we are going to not respond to all of the detailed questions tonight, there's one point I want to make, because just because somebody says something doesn't make it true. This was an introduction of an ordinance only. This action tonight gives the mayor no additional powers whatsoever. This is the process in our state, how we make information public. So that's what this vote was.
But don't you have to do
Please,
don't you have to
Sean,
do 2
we're-
readings?
I'm sorry, I'm gonna
vote.
Sean,
We have talked about it. Steve said it, I said it, Bill said it, I will say it again. This is the same for an ordinance tonight as for any other ordinance. It gets introduced, there has to be a minimum of 2 weeks, and then there has to be a second reading. And the second reading is a public hearing, and that's when the vote takes place to pass it or not pass it. We are not at that yet. That is going to be on December 16th, as currently scheduled.
Sandy Hanna, is it on? Sandy Hanna, 249 South Franklin. First off, you want people to contact people on an email address? It's not on the website. It's only, so they're not on your directory. So
Make sure they are.
Can get in touch. Secondly, we began this whole process, what, 2 years ago? It was all about, low-income housing. Now the crisis is, we've got IDA. So this thing is being pushed under a lot of different things, trying to get it to make it happen. Another point is, and I want to reiterate what Bernadette is saying, and that is that, have any of you actually talked to the Flemington people and found out what happened to them when they sold the property for $1 million? And that it was going to cost them $4 million to get it grandfathered? When you say it's moving for 5 years, do you have to come in with all the grandfather things to make it viable legally to be a police station because it isn't grandfathered? And what that associated costs with? Have any of you checked into that or looked at that or even know? We keep asking, what is the cost? You want to move this police station, but we're not getting anything tangible. And that is what is upsetting people, because there's no coherent business-like approach to this that we can understand in a very logical way.
Hello, my name is Mark Green. I'm at 253 North Main Street. Thank you for addressing both the budget and the timeline involved in some of the public infrastructure repairs. My property does border the collapse of the Arnett drainage system, which is something we've spoken about. And I understand that, we're looking at repairs coming in late 22 and spring of 23. But it's also my understanding that there's going to be some temporary measures.
Yes, I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but I do have some updates for you. I'm not sure if this is, I know that there's a long line here. The $400,000 that we approved tonight, the reason that we rushed that bond was specific to several of the most severe issues. The Arnett drainage and water conveyance issue between North Main Street through to 1 and 2 Arnett is one of those projects. We'll be holding a small meeting with members of your neighborhood, and I believe we also approved some access easement agreements so that we could do some of that temporary work prior to beginning now and into the early part of 2022, where we want to address that, at least a temporary solution for that issue ASAP, because we can't wait until next fall.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Yeah, we will, the city will be in touch with the North Main and Arnett community members to talk about what that temporary solution looks like. It's not great, like I said, this is going to be a Band-Aid on a heating wound of an issue, but we have already put our FEMA application in for this issue, both for the temporary solution and the regular solution. You know that we're concerned, and again, that water conveyance issue is something that's keeping us up at night.
Good evening. My name is Bart Fever, 53 Lambert Lane. And actually just found out that the police station might be moving just down the street. One couple things. First of all, I want to really thank the governing body for holding the webinar, first of all, on that format so that it's online. The only thing is that I would refer back to when Councilwoman Urbish at the time and Councilwoman Taylor held the session, workshop session that was directly on affordable housing. The format was, I thought, very civil at the time. It provided an opportunity for back and forth questioning. By submitting questions in advance, there's no opportunity for people to be able to follow up directly with questions at the time. But I do want to acknowledge that that's my understanding.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's not going to be the format for the event. I was saying that we have an email address available if folks want to send in emails directly to the council, comments, questions, concerns. But the webinar, we will be able to ask questions just like the other webinars that we held on Affordable Housing.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. The other thing I want to acknowledge is the opportunity on the 16th since it's the only opportunity it seems to weigh in on the merits of this, is that will be also held, as I understand, online, and for people to be able to remotely ask questions. That's really very, very helpful.
Yes, we announced that today, and we intend to have that meeting streamed and available to ask online questions.
I think, as it's already been mentioned, a number of us are just frustrated because we've been asking questions about. I'm involved in building projects. I'm involved in multi-million projects all the time, and you're always talking about scope, time, and resources. And at this point, even though financial information is privileged, and I understand the context here, there are other ways in which information about time frame can also be introduced. So, for example, I live at 53 Lambert Lane. I have no idea at this moment when we're actually talking about the police potentially moving down there. If in the past, as I understand, when I've gone to planning board meetings as a neighbor for any development nearby, I'm given an adequate opportunity to respond. And so this evening, as I said, this is all new information. And then lastly, I'm not a religious person, but I do go to the Bible often for wisdom and just common sense. And the Gospel of Luke specifically refers to that for which, sorry, I don't have glasses, for which you desiring to build, does not first sit down and count the cost, whether he has enough to complete it. So basically, going back to centuries-old advice. Thank you.
Charlie Road, 260 North Union Street. I guess I have a couple things. In one sense, I agree with the earlier speaker who mentioned that this has been going on for a long time. It's just recently related to Ida. So in the relation of this to Ida, I would like to see a full postmortem of the damage of Ida, why it happened, how it happened, so that we can look and see, okay, what kind of costs are we looking for? Are we looking at what's our full financial picture in that case for the tax base, for the taxpayers, as well as the city itself? Secondly, I'm a little disturbed. This again seems as backwards as it seemed in 2020, in that we're basically approving a project we haven't seen. Hopefully, when we get to review these, we are seeing a picture of the building itself. Is it appropriate for our community? As similarly with the proposed location of the police force, I'm wondering about the traffic. It is not easy to get. It's a lot easier for our emergency vehicles to get from the current place than it would be to get out of Lambert Lane. So I have safety concerns there. And because of these, if our decision is going to be December 16th, I would ask that you vote that down and not do that. Wait until the new year, wait until we have more time to see what this specific project is, what the specific traffic situation is, the safety issues with police, and what the specific item costs are to the taxpayers. It's another revenue, and also the city. And also just in general, that feeling of how people feel about moving the police itself, that has been a political issue, and I think that's better decided in the new political era.
Gina Fischetti, 116 Clinton Street. It's one thing I wanted to say just before I start. You know, I was looking on the city's website, and it does still say that public comment is given 5 minutes. So I don't know when the change to 3 minutes was made, but just so everybody is aware that it does say on the website that everybody should be permitted 5 minutes. And something else I wanted to mention is in response to the comments that this has to be passed on first reading so that you guys can, you know, give everybody the information. I think really the only reason we want the information is because you're saying this might happen. If we're all to vote no, we don't want the information. We want it to go away, right? So, you know, it's kind of like playing with words a little bit, saying that you have to pass it in order to get this information. I wrote out some comments. I post the ordinances at around 12 o'clock today. We didn't leave people a lot of time to look at them. But I wish you had given more time. So the city promised information that would be made available to everybody in August. We're now in December. There's still no numbers associated with the relocation. We don't know how much it will cost to retrofit the River Horse property fed. We don't know how much the rent will be. We're only given square footage estimates based, you know, the dollar amount per square foot. The length of time the police will be there is not known. It's anywhere from 1 to 10 years. And we also don't know where the final home of the police will be. The proposed ordinance states that it's beneficial to the overall community. What is this finding based on specifically? The project appears to be all residential. What is the 5 to 6 full-time jobs that are quoted in the ordinance based on? What is the commercial operation that's associated with this project? What is the $64,886 in taxes the first year and the $4 million in change based on? It is my understanding that there can be more than one way to calculate pilot payments. I'm wondering if any of this is going to the school district. How does the amount going to the school district compare to what the school would receive after the pilot agreement? Also wondering if what happens if Kaling does not complete the project. How will this impact the pilot? The ordinance says Exhibit A lays out the financial agreement, presumably Haley. But Exhibit A is actually an ordinance allowing a lease with FedBank. What is the relationship between the economic viability of the police station project and the Fedway agreement? To me, those are two separate things. With regard to Exhibit A, how many square feet is the city planning to lease? How much will it cost per year, and how are we paying for this? I have other things to ask. They're on the affordable housing ordinance. I would ask if you would please let me finish what I would like to say.
We have, as you can see, a long line of people. We really should stick to the 3 minutes, but I encourage you to send an email with your prepared comments, and we'll make sure to comment on them. Or if you want to continue your statement, you can get to the back of the line, so it's fair for everyone. That's all. Thank you.
Just for the record, there's one issue there that I think requires clarification. For ordinance on file, the form in the agenda is a draft. The form of ordinance on file, the city clerk removes the language with regard to the 5 or 6 full-time jobs. The one on file is 1 or 2, and removes the commercial. There's obviously no commercial portion, it's residential. So the one that is on file, the one that is adopted tonight, the one that was presented to the council, has those clarifications.
And Bill, if I may, Exhibit A will be posted with the ordinance when it's posted online tomorrow. Exhibit A was not referring to the next ordinance. They were separate things.
Thank you, Cindy.
My name is Kathy Begg, I live at 275 on Main Street. Well, first of all, I didn't know there was going to be a meeting for Main Street people in the display area. But anyway, when I moved to town, police department was underneath City Hall. Then we were told that if we purchased the Chuck Auto body, that one, it was going to be sufficient enough to have a police station there. And that one of the reasons why they pushed it was to easy access to the vehicles and safety vehicles. Now, we're planning on putting it in an area where the ability to get in and out of Lambert Lane is extremely tight and very difficult. And also not really viable. That intersection is not safe as it is right now. The other question I have is, when we when the city purchased Chuck Auto body, there was a lot of reasons for buying it, and the outcome was that was going to be where the station was going to be. That issue was supposed to be settled. Now we're trying to sell that property to create funds, is what I'm hearing. Is there any other funds available for any other building or any other lease options for the city of Lambertville to use? So far, I think, didn't we just buy the Blossom Farm? Is that correct?
Yes.
There's been no movement to raise money on that property. Thank God, Fisherman's Smart was able to use it, and that's really important because it's a huge hub, and I see how much activity goes in and out of that. But the only activity I've seen around that property has been Ed Clausen on his lawn. So I really think we look at other ways to raise money besides selling the police station to lease a temporary police station. I think all the financial facts on it, and I think it's rushing when we really should look at the long-term effect. Because when we bought Chuck's Auto body, that was supposed to be what would help the city and keep the police station accessible on Main Street. And congestion of traffic has increased over the fact that you don't want to pay $3 to go the bridge. So I just don't see how this is viable.
Hi, my name is Trina Bernusco. I live at 142 George Street, and I'm wondering how many letters of support for the police move have there been? Is there a number for that?
Again, we're not responding to comments right now. We're just taking in information from the public. This is a public hearing.
So switching gears. So I'm also a business lease holder at 278 North Union Street, right across the street. It's part of Canal Studios, but it's the site across the street from Rose. And I did a tour with the property manager there on Tuesday, and there are wires exposed, floors unfinished, workers still there, and I'm concerned about my safety and all of our safeties there on a few different fronts. First of all, they were building without permits. I don't know how that's possible. I don't understand that, but to my mind, it doesn't make any sense. Also, when the building was destroyed, was there anybody who reviewed the space? Is that something that the city does?
Yes, so the city's construction official has reviewed all the buildings that were damaged, all the commercial buildings that were damaged by Ida. He's been working directly with the owner of 278 North Union Street on the construction. The city's been monitoring that very closely.
Have they been issued an occupancy certificate?
No.
Okay, I think that's all for now. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Tom Sevick, 81 North Union Street. Points I want to make here. First, I thought it was totally inadequate that we had the vote from the city council on. We had the vote on the city council thing before public comment. I trust public comment may have looked the way the city council wants to go. May have determined them to vote a different way. The second item I wanted to address was, this is a tax abatement. So it's a long-term thing for Lambertville. I think the long-term project should be determined by the upcoming administration, not the current administration. So I think it should be waited until January to actually vote on this and consider it. The third point, I found the minutes, the preparation describing the benefits of the project versus cost, totally inadequate. You said that the police raise no revenue at this point. Of course they don't. And wherever they go, they won't raise any revenue. So to compare what you're getting from Callion on this abatement is totally irrelevant to what the police pay out. They're gonna, it's not reasonable argument. So, and no figures were presented to what the tax abate, what they would pay in taxes versus what they were paying in this agreement. The gentleman said that they would be paying actually more, but there was no indication what assumptions he was making. Obviously, with Ida and the Clausen Farms, our taxes are going up. So who knows what the actual savings they would be getting from this debate? We have no idea. The city should provide better numbers so that an intelligent decision can be made. Thank you.
Lily Chen, 17 Prince Street. I want to stress what Sean said earlier about how bad the decision is for us to pick up this site for affordable housing. We're putting affordable housing, people that are considered low income or low income, moderate income, under such awful condition. And I mentioned this before. I sent previous council members clinical data, which they just fled that. Well, with COVID, we all believe in science now, right? We're wearing masks, we're getting vaccinated. Why was my science that I provided being dismissed? These were clinical trials conducted in Europe, over 29,000 subjects, and 69% of the children within 300 feet of high tension wires, 69% of spike in rare childhood cancer. Here, we're putting young families, probably young families, under less than 200 feet. So right there, that's an immoral issue that we're putting families under. The The other thing is, this is all about 5 amendments, 5 rental units. I think you can find that solution somewhere, especially with Ida. I think it has created a whole different landscape in our city. And I think we can find 5 places that we can put 5 affordable housing instead of doing what we're doing, which makes no sense. Nobody wants it. I can't see anybody here, nor have you received a letter of support for this, unless there is a support here, but I don't hear it. So far, everyone's against this idea. So that's my point right now, and I think before you ram this through so that the next mayor has to live with it, I think he needs to be heard and whether this is something he wants to support. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Philomena Hanks. I'm at 56 Button Street. I'm the vice president of the school board, but not speaking on behalf of the school board. I'm here as an individual taxpayer, educator, and parent. Having seen no support for the schools stated in this ordinance for the next 30 years, I urge you to vote no. Other ideas exist around how to avoid the withholding of funding to public schools that pilots promote. For example, maybe you've heard of Frenchtown Ceramics. The proposed pilot program would be for 30 years. The developer would pay the municipality 95% of the revenue generated from the development, which ends up being 27% on every dollar received, or about $340,000 in the first year of the project completion. And the schools in Frenchtown will receive 42% of the 95% total revenue generated that the municipality would receive. So that's one example I just wanted to point out to you where a pilot is contributing to the schools. The issues facing our public schools are significant, especially given all the disruption and extra costs to staff, students, and schooling due to the pandemic. As an elementary school teacher myself, I've spent over $1,000 to supply things so I can teach students in person. N95 masks to wear each day. I have another student this week who has COVID. Our staff are coming down with COVID. Nurses are coming down with COVID. I'm supplying myself and my students with lanyards so they don't lose their masks. Stress balls because their mental health is suffered. Single paper towels to avoid cross-contamination. Hand sanitizer, glasses wipes, Lysol wipes, gloves, baby wipes to wipe their desks, and a high-quality air purifier for my classroom. Recently, I've had to quarantine from my own children because I was exposed at school. I am not alone. Please support educators and schools. This is a critical time to invest in schools and not divert funding from them.
Good evening. My name is Dave Berg. I live at 255 Brunswick Avenue in Lambertville. I've lived in Lambertville all of my life. That's a long time. I served as the volunteer Office of Emergency Management Coordinator for Lambertville for over 2 decades. And I can tell you, all right, that site with the oyster cracker, the had wonderful labs, durable sailors, whatever you want to call it, over the years, that floods and it becomes inaccessible. The building was actually flooded in 2005 and 2006. And in the flood of 1955, there was severe flooding. So you're talking about putting a critical community service in an area that floods. Not a good idea. And I'm also very disappointed that we somehow have got to the point that the promise was we were going to have numbers and evaluations that we could discuss, and we don't have it yet. And we seem to be heading down the road real fast.
Good evening, everybody. So we just had an election, right?
Name and address, please.
So we just had an election. right?
Your name and address?
Oh, excuse me. My name is Michael Redden. I live at 23 Park Street. And so we just had an election in our town. And in this overwhelmingly blue city, an independent candidate lost by 26 votes. Why? It's because there's no consensus. There's not a consensus in this town. And we're pushing forward with some very serious stuff. Stuff that's gonna decide on people's ability to live in this town. Good politics is about consensus. We should be trying to serve the whole community. You know, half the people in this town are not happy. Okay, we're not getting the information. Every meeting, we're kicking the can down the road. That's what we always hear. This vote doesn't mean anything. We'll confront it at the next vote. It's disingenuous. Every time there's a test, the public says they're not happy with the progress. A new administration is coming in, and that gives the council the opportunity to examine their goals. And I really hope that our council people think about everything they've heard in the last 2 years. Thank you. And just one more thing too, like with the police department, when the Lambertville house wanted to develop the lower lot there, we blocked them by saying that Bridge Street had an F rating for traffic. Okay, that's a fact that can be checked through the records. So this city blocked the Lambertville house from developing the lower parking lot by saying that the State Department of Transportation gave Bridge Street an F rating. Now, we want to make that one of the 2 points of egress for the police department. Doesn't sound like we're doing our due diligence. Thank you.
Hello? And I'm gonna be mayor. This is Andrew Dewitt, 190 North Union Street. Good evening, Mayor Paul, City Council members, Madam Clerk, Mr. Opal, Mr. Drillis. I'm gonna read this just because I like to get things just so important to me. I'd like to offer my thanks for your work, for your commitment to the city. And I can assure you that it's going to be a great honor for me to share the burdens and the joys of governing with people as fine as yourselves. Here we are in December 2, 2021. You voted to move the police redevelopment into the final phase of public and council consideration. I support this particular vote because it will bring all the facts into the public arena. Whether I support the project remains to be seen. As of tonight, I'm still a private citizen like everyone on this side of the dais. I do not have all the information I need to take a final position. Once I have that information, I will begin my process of deciding. I will talk to residents on both sides. I will look at the facts and think into the far term, trying to glean as many permutations of success and failure as a critical mind may. I promise to consider not only the financial and practical elements, but also the impressive and thoughtful public engagement this project has engendered. I will offer a formal position to the public and the council before or at the December 16th meeting. I thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Hi, my name is Jessie Marie Villas, working member Lake. I'm going to keep my comment short because I pretty much agree with what everyone else has been saying. First off, I'm deeply concerned with the environmental concerns for where we are proposing affordable housing. Secondly, don't think we should move forward with this if we don't know our permanent location for the future police station. Thirdly, I live on Lambert Lane, just learned today that the police station is temporarily going to be located at 80 Lambert Lane. As someone who used to be an EMT, I know that there are going to be significant traffic problems within that location for emergency vehicles. I'm also concerned with the lease agreement, and I would like to learn more information about Friendly Associates and also who will be paying for the renovations to that location to make it secure for a police station. So I'm hoping to learn more about that next week. Totally different note. I want to just thank the Lambertville City Council for agreeing to participate in the settlement against Johnson & Johnson. As someone who's lost multiple loved ones and friends to the opioid epidemic and has many friends and loved ones who are still suffering, I know this settlement is going to save lives, so I appreciate you for participating. Thank you.
again, everyone, Evan Lyons, 900 Avenue. I'm just a little concerned. I don't think the law has changed since this summer, has it? Because the timeline that we put out, that you put out, indicated that on August 10th, we were gonna have a public presentation of findings and public discussion of all options. So when you put this time frame out, you knew you couldn't release the information. Didn't change. Because on August 19th, that's when the pilot introduction was going to be introduced. So either you put this timeline out that day or the law changed. I have serious concerns about this. This is a terrible location for the police. It's in a flood zone. It's going to flood. We just heard Dave Berg, who was the OEM manager for years, complain about it. So I just think that this whole process has been flawed. I think we need to step back. I think we need to look at everything. I'm also wondering, why don't we know about the relocation costs? Because I don't think that's confidential information. Is it, Mr. Ogle?
All of this data will be released with the agreement to move police is subject to the the agreement to move police subject to the lease. The terms and lease agreement is a private financial document that is a negotiation with a third party. And we released because we voted on it for first reading.
And I certainly understand that, but I'm not talking about police. I'm talking about the cost of relocation, which I have been to multiple meetings and multiple members of council said they would not take a vote until the public knew about the cost of relocation, and we still don't know. That's wrong.
I'm sorry, can I respond to that just quickly? Yes. I am still one of those council members who said that, and the fact remains, we have not taken a vote on this, and we'll be releasing that information for the advertising for the meeting on Tuesday, so Wednesday. Sorry, Wednesday, we can, there are lots of timeline issues we can discuss, but I just want to make sure that we're very clear on that fact, that people don't leave this meeting having the wrong assumption about what has happened here today.
Can I respond to that? Can I still have another bit? We're entitled to the information. We're entitled to the information about the relocation. You guys have it. There is no reason why we can't know tonight what it's going to cost to relocate the police department. And unless Mr. Opal tells me otherwise.
I mean, there is no legal reason why that's our information.
It's subject to the privilege of the governing body. Part of the action that we took tonight.
Yeah.
Mr. Ogle.
Information is still privileged, so they're released on the website for Wednesday night when there is.
I'm Sharon, we have 53 Over Avenue. And the first thing, I have so many questions. Everybody does. There's so much information that we need, and it's great if we get it. One thing that really concerns me is that our incoming mayor doesn't have this information either. And if he has as much time as we do to go over this information before it gets voted on. And it concerns me that he then has to live with, he's coming in less than a month and has to live with whatever vote happens before he has a chance to even, be a part of this process. So I'm not trying to put this on you, Andrew. I'm just saying that I would prefer for this all to happen, as others have said, with our new administration. Also, just a couple of comments. I agree with what most people have been saying. As a parent, I would never choose to move my children that close to power lines. And I think that most of us who have children wouldn't make that choice either, because that science is there. And why would we risk our children? And yet we're promoting this as an affordable housing option. And there was one comment that this was a way to optimize. Well, it's not really, because it got bumped up to 27 units. And we have 5, but if it was 28 units, we'd have to have 6. So really, it's the developer doing as little affordable housing as possible in order to make this happen. And also to Philomeno's point, I have kids in our schools, and I love our schools. They've been so wonderful. And we're struggling, and we just had this referendum that passed by 2 votes. And I know that I heard a lot of people were concerned about the tax implications, and maybe didn't want to vote for that to support our students, our future, because of the tax implications, and yet we're gonna make this tax exempt. We need as much money as we can going into our schools, because we need to support those of us who have kids in our schools to excel, but also families coming in, kids coming in. Education is one of the best things we have to offer. So the idea that money goes to the city, that's great. We need money to go to our educators and our children. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tom Floor, 15 Douglas Street. I thank you all for your service to the community. I know it's a hard job. I thank you all sincerely. I call on you all to vote no on the 16th and give our friend a chance to come up with a better idea. Thank you very much.
I have a quick, sorry. I'm gonna.
Oh, sorry, before we start, if there's any other comments, I'll ask that you get in line now, otherwise we'll close public comment after this comment.
Hi, my name is Marina Fronte, 28 South Main and 54 South Main. So, I feel, let me start with expressing my feelings about police officers. I've been, spending most of their days next to high-powered, power lines. So I honestly feel bad for them being that way, let alone building an apartment complex. Not good at all. So by moving our police station, someone was asking a question, how much it's going to cost us. It's very simple. The numbers are here. So 9,365 square feet times 10 on average, $10 per square foot. Is that a month or a year?
Per year.
So it's going to be $93,000 a year. Okay? Does that answer your question?
Because it doesn't tell where the new place station's gonna go.
Right. Now, maybe we can consider other options. What about that farm that we all purchased? Right? It's all belongs to the city, to the taxpayers. Why can't we move police station there? What are we gonna do with that farm? Why? Maybe we should sell it. Or what about the high school going up on the hill? We keep, hearing once in a while plans about development there. Up on the hill. You know which one? There's plenty of space to develop affordable housing. Am I right? And moving police station into this town, into the city is never a good idea. There was options discussed about moving into South Union Street, build a new acting building, 4-story, 5-story, 6-story. It's flooded, so we have sinkholes. So it's not safe. Besides, I don't think people living on South Union Street will be happy to have more traffic, just like people from Lambertville. I'm sorry. So I think as homeowners, and taxpayers.
I'm sorry, that's 3 minutes. I appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Well, thank you for attention.
I'm assuming we're in open public comment about the whole everything, right? We're not.
Yes,
Okay.
but you do have to state your name and.
I will, Judy Gleason, 86 North Union Street. I have a couple of questions that have nothing to do with what we've been talking about here. One is on September 15th, there was a meeting of the city officials and several members of the resource community to be helpful to the village department people who had been suffered so badly during Ida. There were a number of people from the resource community who were present at the meeting on September 15th, and they were available to the people from the department. We were told there would be a list of those people available to the people who were there. I have not been able to locate a list of those people, but I know people from the village departments who would like to know some of the resource people who were at that meeting to follow up on things, and I don't think we know where the list is. So my first thing is, could I get that list?
Are you talking about the list of the attendees or the list of the resource?
The resource people, not the.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I misunderstood your email. We can follow up the list of resources, that is.
It was the resource people who were there.
Yes, that list is available on the website, but we will follow up directly.
I couldn't find it on the website, but that would be great.
We don't have a list of all of, I can go back here and dig out the specific individuals who were present, but that is less relevant than the agencies that they come from. And that, there was a handout, a physical handout that was sent out, it was put on Facebook all throughout the entire March period. I forwarded it to Cindy just today in response to your email, so we'll get back to it.
That would be great. I don't do Facebook, learning my lesson long ago.
I'm merely commenting that the suggestion was it was never made public, which is not quite the case. I understand it didn't get to you, but we'll make sure.
No, I appreciate that. Second thing, on the matter that you passed tonight, having to do with the 6-month extension for the, what was it, 178 or 278?
278.
Okay. On that point, the question was asked, I think, Councilwoman, you asked the question whether this would affect the tenants. Actually, as many of you probably know, if you have a lease and you have substantial damage or damage to the where you are leasing, and it's not repaired within a certain period of time, you can walk out of your lease. I'm sure that one question is whether this extension somehow damages that ability for tenants to walk out of their lease. And I noted in the past, it was talking about substantial damage, and it was also talking about repair that was not dealing with some of the new flood rules that we have. So I'm hoping that the city will be able to clarify that for any tenant who's in that position, if the landlord says we have a 6-month extension, because they don't.
The city's not in the position to be able to comment on a tenant's legal rights.
No, it would only be talking about what gave the 6-month extension on. What you said tonight was the 6-month extension was to deal with the new flood requirements for damaged places from the flood. The tenants, there's other issues that are present here, and I think if you are asked, you only extended for the new flood requirements, not for the basic repairs, as I understood what you said. So then the third thing that
That's true, but it's you'll have your seconds back, but it's a little complicated. With the level of damage that was done to that structure, it would be very hard to separate out flood damage versus other damage. So I only raised it to be clear. I've had some communication with tenants, so I wanted to put it on the record that I have received it, we're aware of it. We are not in the middle of that tenant landlord situation, but if and when the situation arises, we have to comment on it, we will do it as fairly accurately as we can.
right, understood. I mean, necessary repairs is one of the things the resolution said, and necessary repairs is what they had to have done for the tenants. But I know you're not going to do that. My last thing was the professional services RFPs, which I think our people need to do that by tomorrow. When I looked through that, I was looking for the animal control officer position, and it's not listed there. And I was advised through the city that actually there's not anything in that because it's below the threshold number. And what I wondered was if the council was aware that if someone else wanted to bid on animal control, or another entity wanted to bid on animal control, perhaps at a lower number, which is what we talked about, the competition, they don't have an opportunity to do that unless the city lets them do that. And I just thought, well, I'll just ask the city council tonight, what does the person have to do?
So, any vendor can reach out to the city and proffer services regardless of whether or not we're going through the formal bidding process. I'm sure Andrew, as the mayor, has already received several text messages and phone calls from Peter Weaver consultants. That's the formal bidding process that we're going through right now is statutory procurement for these larger contracts, but anybody can reach out to Cindy or Andrew or myself to offer their services. Whether or not the city considers them is an entirely different
Sure,
question.
but the city would not be going ahead with any agreements on anybody for next year until some point in time, I assume, and I didn't know if a person was not subject to the RFP thing also had a deadline of this Friday.
Most municipal contractors know that the reorganization process begins whenever the new inauguration happens, which will be January 4th at 6 p.m. Getting better at that, just in time. Anybody who has long-standing municipal contracts knows that December is the time to be reaching out to proper services.
Thank you, appreciate that. And I close the comment.
I think there's one more.
Hello, how are you this evening? My name is Alexis Baird, and I no longer live in Lambertville because I cannot afford here. I live in West Amwell with my parents.
I'm sorry, could you take your mask down? I'm having trouble.
There's a filter, so it probably makes it a little harder. I live in West Amwell now with my parents because I can no longer afford to live in Lambertville. My family's been here for, we've traced 7 generations, and so that would be the seventh generation. My great grandfather was mayor during the flood of 1955. We have a very long history in this town. It sounds like what's happening with the police redevelopment is in order to create a total of 5 affordable housing units, which falls short of what we actually need in town. Most of the people I went to high school with, when I speak to them, their parents can no longer afford to live in town and they were forced to sell. A lot of people I know have been economically displaced, and it's very hard for a lot of people. So we're having these conversations about relocating a police department that people don't want to have, and it seems to be a waste of resources and time to discuss this instead of just saying no. Especially when it is only 5 affordable housing units. We need way more than that. I know that that's the legal requirement, but I think we should start looking for more creative solutions, like community land trusts, or looking at the houses that need to be developed in town and see if maybe we can use that and just have a big community conversation, hopefully with Andrew coming in, how we can make that happen and have the town speak for everybody. Multi-generational families that want to live here. It's just reality of the situation. I went to school in this very room. I went to LPS, my son won't go here, and we might have to move out of the area entirely because it's just too expensive. So hopefully you'll all take that into consideration because it's very emotional for me and for many.
I want to thank you for your comments here. I absolutely agree with you that affordability is one of the key issues in our community, and I think I did nothing but highlight what was already a tragically under reviewed issue. It's one of the reasons that I've spent the last 2.5 years working diligently on affordable housing. The only comment I will make is that our affordable housing plan is not just these 5 units. This is a small part of a much larger plan. This is just the affordable housing units, whether or not these 5 will get developed. We also have already started to take steps towards condemnation of the village apartments, and we have identified multiple other areas and very creative solutions in our affordable housing plan to address what is a systemic housing stock issue in our community, not just because it's required of us by the Affordable Housing Council, Coalition on Affordable Housing and Fair Share Housing, because it's our moral obligation.
Speaking of moral obligation, it is under high tension letters, and the National Institute of Health does have information available linking to the movement. Most of the families that I've talked to who do not economically live here anymore have children and didn't be forced to live under these extension wires, and I think that that's very personal information to look at. It sounds like Lily gave you some information, but I have more if I can send it to you.
Thank you.
Is it okay if I make them?
Yes, please. Are there any other comments from, or if there are other comments, Gina, no, I'm sorry, you can come up, but if there are any others, if you wouldn't mind lining up afterwards, I appreciate it.
Sorry, this will be quick, and actually, it has to do with the proposed affordable housing ordinance, that you heard on first reading tonight, which, changes the current ordinance to require 20, for projects 5 or more units, 20% of them or 1 unit would be affordable in the downtown area, meaning between the 29 and the river. And so what I'm wondering, given all the statements made, everyone seems to be in agreement that Lambertville needs more affordable housing. Awesome that everybody's on the same page with that. What I'm wondering is why that ordinance doesn't apply to the entirety of the municipality, which would, and by which I mean, you know, not just the downtown area, but also the hills where, you know, everybody knows there's more space up there. And then also, as kind of like a follow-up to that, I'm curious, just like, so with this new ordinance, or not to get into affordable housing details, but are you going to be amending the housing element fair share plan to include it as a mechanism? Where are the units going towards? What are you using them to address if you are going to be amending the fair share plan? And if you are going to be amending it, have you been talking with Fair Share Housing Center? Are you going to have to go back before the judge? Are you reopening our affordable housing plan? Because if you are, there's a lot of other opportunities and a lot of ideas that are floating around town. People have been talking, and I'm sure that, you know, there's a lot of really innovative ideas. So.
Emily, I'll let you take most of that. I will say it's not the intention of myself or this council at this time to reopen our affordable housing agreement. However, if this if these ordinances for the county and agreement fail, then we'd be forced to go back to and reopen our affordable housing agreement. We have been, of course, talking to Fair Share throughout this process to understand what the consequences for you know, failing on our current agreement.
Okay, so the first question about why does the amended mandatory set aside extend the portion where it would be any project that results in 5 units or more with density of 6 units per acre extend to the whole city. And it's really because when I did the vacant land analysis in 2016, 2017, I actually looked at existing densities to determine what percentage of density should be used to determine if affordable housing units would result in development of those sites. What I found is the hill portion of the town, all the existing density is under 6 units per acre. So, you know, there's not that existing density option up there for to ever hit that 6 units per acre density. So if something were to be developed on the hills at a density of 6 units per acre, they would need the use variance or density variance or redevelopment plan. So it's already captured in the existing mandatory set aside. This is really for more of the downtown, which has more of a existing density of 14 units per acre or more. So it's really capturing development in the downtown.
I can see what you're saying with other area, but you know, going up Franklin Street or, I mean, there are, I would think, places outside of the area that's identified in the ordinance where the existing density is greater than 6 units. So just, you know, it might be an opportunity to create, you know, actually seize other affordable housing opportunities. There's a lot of redevelopment, not big R, you know, where you guys are designating an area in need of redevelopment, but small R redevelopment happening throughout town. There's lots of sites for sale. Speaking of which, one of them is the Little Haven Rest Home up on Cottage Hill. You know, the city gets designates that in its plan for 17 units. I think 11 of them are RDP The remainder go towards unmet needs. So I'm also wondering how the city's going to address that once that sells. And you know,
Yeah, so, let me first address your second question of the amended housing plan. The housing plan already talked about the mandatory set aside ordinance as an option in there. That was required as part of the very first settlement agreement and part of, it's required with any settlement for a town that's a vacant land town. So, while we're amending the mandatory set aside ordinance to expand where it would be, where it would kick in, I don't think that alone necessitates needing to amend the whole housing plan, because it already discusses that as a mechanism for unmet needs. So any units created with a mandatory set aside go towards the unmet need satisfaction. Your next question about the Little Haven group home. So those are prior cycle credits that was created starting in 1984. They're not actually deed restricted, but they've been operating as affordable units as a group home licensed by Department of Health, I think it is, for over 30 years at this point. So because they're prior cycle, even if it's sold and it's no longer operating as affordable housing, we can still get credit for them as those prior cycle.
Okay, I think we've sort of landed into a place where we're doing question and answer right now, which I already said that we're not going to do. But I hope that was edifying. Are there any further questions or comments before we close the public hearing?
Hi, Colleen Ryan, 23 Perry Street. I just want to express my opposition to moving the police station to Lambertville. Just the word lane is an arrow. It's not an appropriate place for a police station. The second comment I want to question I really have is, if I remember correctly, the proposal for the police station in Callion, there was some concern about parking. If I remember correctly, there was a concern about the number of people parking units, and now we're moving from 23 to 27. So I'm curious how that's going to be happening.
The Callion plan actually provides for more parking than is required.
Okay.
Quite a bit more parking.
Quite a bit. I thought it was 1.5 green. Am I mistaken by that?
So too close. The existing redevelopment plan only required 1.5 spaces per unit. What county is proposing is actually more than that per unit.
And can you share what that is?
I don't have that number off the top of my head, but I can get it for each one.
46 over 27.
Okay.
This question is for Council President Taylor. A few
I'm
months
sorry, you're not allowed to address anybody but the chair. You can address the council or the chair.
Well, a few months back, Council President Taylor made a comment about the Zoom meetings that you would try to find some funding, and I'm curious where we landed on that.
What I said that I support us moving to Zoom. This administration has decided, and we've talked at several meetings, including our last one, that nothing's going to change this year. The incoming mayor is supportive of it, and we'll find a way to do it.
Thank you.
Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn our meeting?
Are we closing the, are we open the public comment?
Yeah, this was public comment.
Oh, that was after.
That was everything.
That was
It was all public comment. Okay, can I get a motion to close?
Second.
All in favor?